The contents of this program may not necessarily represent the views of Ummah Channel.
Hi and welcome to Living a Dynamic Life. I'm Miriam Louise Curtis and I'm here to welcome today's guest, Steve Jack. Hi and welcome, and thank you so much for coming from London, from Ibiza, from London and back again. So how on earth am I going to introduce what you do, because you do so many things, Steve?
Well, I'll leave it up to you because you've had direct experience of what I do. We haven't done some work together. So how would you describe it? I always find it fascinating. I can barely describe it myself, what I do.
I just find it amazing. People struggle enough to kind of describe what I do, but having personal experience of the Limitless workshop in London, I can't believe it's only 3 weeks ago. Yes. Transformational, life coach, healer.
There's many things, I guess, and to help frame it up, I guess I work across the mind, body and energy paradigm. So I'm working on all those different levels and all dimensions. And essentially I'm working on two things: to expand people's consciousness and then to help them through their transformation to the highest reality they can experience in this life. And I do that very simply by raising their vibration.
So there's a lot there that obviously most of the viewers may not understand.
Sure.
People very rarely understand what their vibration is. But from my understanding, it's the soul, it's the spirit, it's their energy levels. We all know when we feel low, when we feel that we've got a beautiful, invigorated energy. So the vibration is our energy. How else would you describe that?
So many people probably are not aware that they have an energy field around them. So we have a physical body, which they're very aware of, and they have their mind, which they're constantly thinking all day. We also have a field of energy which emanates from our body, and it's known as a bioenergy field. And physics and science is all validating this. And there are different levels and different components to our energy field, such as our energy centers or chakras, which they've been known in the past, which metabolize the energy from the 0 point field, or from the field that sits between you and us, because the space between you and us is not actually empty. It's alive, teeming with space, and it's filled with information, it's filled with light, and of course spirit. And so our field is constantly metabolizing that energy, and it's flowing through our energy centers, and that energy then gets accreted into our cells and transported through the body, such as through the mechanical highways, such as the meridians and then the nadis, which are simply just energy channels, kind of like rivers. And they process this incoming light intelligence throughout our system. And so what I do is I help people get back into flow of that, and to increase the amount of light intelligence or light that their cells can hold, so that their vibration gets raised.
So the body is made of light, sound and energy. So basically what you're saying is that you're creating a safe space where we can clear maybe unwanted emotions, because if we look at the emotions, we have heavy emotions such as sadness and grief, and equally put some light in there, which is joy, bliss. And I think most of us live in the doldrums of life. We have, the scientists tell us that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Most people don't even realize what they're actually thinking.
Totally.
You know, most people are on the hamster wheel of life: work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. So I mean, I personally experienced massive changes since the Limitless workshop.
It's going to keep going for you as well. It's only been 3 weeks, so you're going to continue to keep unlocking. It's going to keep improving.
Absolutely.
So in terms of how this sits in someone's energy field, let's give an example of someone who has maybe repeating negative looping thoughts, which is most of humanity, to be honest with you, because of all the programming that gets put from the outside in terms of television and advertising and so many different external things coming into people's awareness, which kind of creates this internal mechanism of looping thoughts which go around, which are of what we call a low vibration. Simply they're the ones that don't make you feel good. Wherever your thoughts go, your emotions follow. And if you have a worrisome thought, anxiety-based thought, fear-based thought, what happens to your energy field is that begins to crystallize and make a dense sort of component of your energy field. Your emotions sit on what we call your second level of your energy field, and we have these different levels and layers, around 7. And
so we're talking about the aura.
We're talking obviously about the aura, and there's different components of the aura, and part of this is the emotional body. Mm-hmm. And the emotional body is kind of what happens when you have negative looping thoughts. Heaviness and clouds and mucus kind of sit in this energy field, making your vibration lower, and so you feel heavy and dense. And so what I'm able to do, and many people like me who are healers are able to do, is to go into someone's energy field and pull out that heaviness. Mm-hmm. So immediately someone feels lighter and their thinking improves and their vibration rises. Because whatever frequency you are vibrating at is exactly what comes towards you. And some people may have heard of this through the law of attraction, which was popularized a few years ago. But the mechanism of it is that whatever frequency you're vibrating at, photons of light from the matrix get built out around your bioenergy field. And what happens is that when you have the same looping thoughts and vibrations for long enough, this creates a template around your bioenergy field in what we call the astral plane, which is a different dimension. And then what begins to happen is that when that template is built out based upon your recurring thoughts, emotions and thinking and frequency, that those things held in your field begin to get attracted towards you. Which is why people get caught up in patterns. Mm. The same sort of destructive relationships, the same relationships with money and finances, or the same relationships, addictive behaviors with food, is that they're holding these frequencies in their field and are attracting the same types of people who are of a similar resonance towards them, which is why they can't get out of the looping patterns of relationships. Mm-hmm. And so working with energy and frequency and the mind and body and energy together, what it does, it creates a very holistic transformation in that we're able to pull out those discordant frequencies which are no longer serving someone and put back into them harmonious frequencies which are going to attract the right people, the right situations, better quality opportunities, better quality events, people and circumstances into their field and holographic reality.
So it makes perfect sense, because obviously if we're operating on a low vibration because we're sad or we're upset or we feel negative, lack of self-esteem, self-confidence, then of course around us we're going to attract people who feel the same way.
100%.
And obviously when we do work as I do, as you do as healers, then that work becomes massively transformational.
Oh, I mean, goodness.
I was very, very happy before I obviously met you and experienced the workshop. And obviously for me, watching the other people experience the workshop, we all felt that profundity, even within the first morning.
Yes.
And, you know, I am honestly forever grateful for that. But just tell me how you got into all this, because we all have different stories as to how we became aware of healing, because most of us are asleep or disconnected, you know, and we're here to remember what we're here to do on the life kind of purpose, aren't we? So Absolutely. How did you get into all this?
Well, I used to be one of those people asleep, absolutely filled with fear, anxiety, grief, worry, stress. I had it all. That's why I help so many people now, because I had so many issues. My path starting into it was, you see, I could not imagine myself doing this 10 years ago. It's impossible. But what happened was that things happened in terms of direct experience, which led me to following the path and trying to really understand what's really happening to me. So perhaps I'll go back a little bit in time to talk about how I came into doing what I do now and being and embodying this work. Growing up, I grew up in an environment, in a household where I didn't really feel safe necessarily. I got yelled at a lot from my father, and I always felt a little bit of terror in my system. And it was this terror that created a lot of anxiety and worry and fear in my life going forward. And from a young age also, I experienced a lot of sickness in my family. My mother, when I was about 5 or 6, had a hysterectomy because she had a tumour in a uterus this big. And then from the age of, when I was 13, she developed breast cancer. And I saw firsthand just what the modern medical approach does in terms of, you know, how it's quite, the treatments of the mastectomy and then radiation and chemotherapy. And, you know, from age 13 or 14, I remember holding my mother over the toilet, trying to pull her back so she's not falling into it, but, you know, and clumps of hair falling out. I mean, the treatment is worse than the disease.
Wow.
You know, I mean, and anyone who's had someone suffering in the point of a sickness or an illness with cancer can really connect to that experience. It really is very traumatic. And so from that point, I guess it was seeded within me the interest in health. And that was my first path. I got into, you go to university from New Zealand, where I'm from. I went to University of Otago and studied physical education and psychology. I wanted to get into working with the body and the mind, I guess, together. More with athletes, I think, when I first began, but it didn't work out that way. I ended up working with the general public and executives. And I began working for many years as a personal trainer and a therapist, a physical therapist, not a mental therapist. I was very good with my hands and getting people out of pain, working with the tissues, coaching people on nutrition, coaching them around improving their lifestyles. And it was through this experience over the years that other things began happening to me that I just couldn't explain. I mean, an example might be where I was working with a client and I have them on my table and I go to treat them, but before I do, I put my hands over his lower back. I remember as if this was yesterday because it was one of those moments in your life that really fundamentally changes the course of your direction. I put my hands over his lower back like this. And I said, just lie down, I'm going to start in a moment. And then in about 10 seconds later, he kicks off and goes, ow, what are you doing? It feels like you're putting a needle into me. And I said to him, I haven't touched you yet. And on the inside, I'm going, hubba, 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 this is really weird. What's going on? And
so you were purely working in the energy field,
I had
2
no
or
idea
3 inches over the back.
Totally. So if this was his back, my hands are about that far away. I mean, I had no idea what an energy field was at that point. I was just following the flow and put my hands there. So I said, lie back down again. And on the inside, I said, I'm going to try that again. That's quite trippy. Put my hands over him again, and sure enough, he kicks off again, feels a sharp pain in his back. And I said, listen, I don't know what's going on, but do you drink lots of alcohol? And he said to me, yes, I'm in the hospitality industry, and every night after work I get completely battered.
So you just intuited that?
Well, I don't know how it happened. I don't know how I got the information, but what I think what happens is kidneys felt cold.
Yeah.
And so they felt like stones. And so anyway, I didn't realise he ended up changing this bloke's life, but he didn't realise it ends up changing mine more. And I had to try to understand the mechanism of what was going on. And this drew me to trying to read books and everything. And I remember one of the first books I read was a book by a woman called, two people, Carolyn Myss and Dr. Norman Shealy. Dr. Norman Shealy was the head of the Complementary Medical Association. And Carolyn Myss was a medical intuitive. I never heard what a medical intuitive was. But anyway, the book title captured me, called Anatomy of the Spirit. So this could be interesting.
Very profound read, actually.
You've read it?
Absolutely.
Well, I didn't believe it when I first read the book. I thought it was complete nonsense, to be honest with you. But I'll quickly explain for the listeners the basic premise of the book. He's in Dr. Norman Shealy's in New York with a successful medical practice with many doctors at the clinic, and he gets the difficult cases. Carolyn Myss is in LA, so, other side of the country. Whenever he gets a difficult case, he would phone her and ask for a reading. All he would give her was the patient's name and date of birth. And she would diagnose the patient. Over the 14 years they worked together, they kept all the records. She was 93% accurate on the diagnosis.
Wow.
I mean, not only that, she went into the emotional, spiritual reason as to why the disease was there in the first place. She was actually more accurate than the physical doctors measuring her. Amazing.
And obviously no side effects.
No side effects. So what completely threw me there was the fact that how is this woman diagnosing people from other side of the... There was nothing in my course that could account for that. So at first I didn't want to believe it. But I did something that I feel if the viewers can do, it can really fundamentally change your life. Rather than flat out not believe something, what you can do is you can reframe it and say, what must I believe for this to be true? And this little reframe changes my whole life and takes me on another trajectory like this.
So just opening your mind.
Opening
your heart.
And saying, this is what's happening to me in direct experience.
And listening.
I have to look into it. Because you see, your heart knows the way, the direction.
Absolutely.
And what often our does is our head and our mind, because of the programming and conditioning from our society, our parents and our teachers, kind of quite often shortens the bandwidth of what we feel we believe. And then what we automatically do because of these beliefs is automatically delete, generalize, distort any information which is not in alignment with these beliefs. Thankfully, I was able to interrupt this belief and be open enough to explore it, and I come across quantum physics. So I was a bit dull for a few years because I was reading quantum physics for fun on a Friday and in between clients and sessions, and I come across a law called non-locality. And non-locality, the law of quantum physics around this one states that two quantum particles can be the other side of the planet, the universe, or wherever, and be in instant communication with each other. And so this gave me a thread of hope, because maybe this woman is somehow tapping into this field of energy and being able to read it. And that's what started this whole pathway. And then I come across someone who is an absolutely remarkable woman. She's an ex-NASA scientist. She worked at NASA for a number of years in the 1960s, Dr. Barbara Brennan. She's two PhDs, one in atmospheric physics. And this remarkable woman was studying the different energy frequencies of outer space to do the rocket calculations to put the men on the moon. When she finishes that project in '69, she then spends the rest of her life, instead of studying outer space, she studies inner space.
Inner space.
Yes, and she began studying the human energy biofield, the human energy consciousness system, and correlating what was going on in the biofield to what's going on in the tissues, and then working on healing skills and tools and vibrational techniques to adjust surgically what's happening in the field. I come across her work, and immediately I knew I needed to go study with her. So I spent 4 years commuting from London to Austria to study with this woman at her school when she was still teaching, and went through my own transformation, because at the starting point I was very closed in the heart through life's betrayals. My mother ended up getting sick again after when I was about 25, and went downhill very quickly. At the same time my mother passed away, I had a traumatic relationship breakup where my partner was being unfaithful for that 6 months my mother was sick. So I remember that I was very heavy in the heart. I was very closed and blocked. And gradually, working on myself energetically, I began to open myself up again to love and to emotions and to many things that were blocked because of all the life issues that were happening.
Do you think that everybody who kind of begins to take a back step from life and think, well, sometimes, you know, spiritually we say, what am I here to learn from that experience? Rather than, oh, why is that happening to me again, playing the victim? And I think it's very beautiful that you can be honest and, you know, for a woman talking to a man, because for a man to open to his emotions, you know, women are usually better communicators, more nurturing. But I just think that it's just so beautiful that you can be honest about how you feel. And, you know, I really hope and I know that this interview is going to touch many, many people, because the more honest we are, we can all talk about, oh, what did you have for your tea? Did you watch telly? Did you do this? Did you do that? Yes. Let's talk about the real things that really matter.
Because they're all distractions, really, from what we're really here
to do.
The
coping mechanisms, aren't they?
Absolutely. We're really, from a soul perspective, we're here to achieve soul growth in this lifetime, which means expanding our consciousness, raising our vibration, working on ourselves through our issues.
And we can't do that with a closed heart.
Absolutely not.
If you read a book with a closed heart, with a closed mind, then, you know, if it's a spiritual book, it is not going to touch you.
And I feel what happens in society is that we have created a culture and a grouping of people who, you see, what should happen is that energy comes in through your chakras, and it comes in through the third chakra, the stomach chakra first.
The solar plexus.
This is your gut feelings and intuition. Then going, wow, the energy will flow up into your heart, where the energy, you'll feel the energy. This is why it's much easier for women, because they're much more open in the emotional chakras. Men are a lot more closed down in these chakras and a lot more open in the back chakras, which are will. And in general, men are more calibrated by the will chakras at the back, or force, and the intellect. So what happens is that they miss out on all the intuitive feed. And so when it becomes time to follow the direction of the heart, they try to intellectualize how that's going to happen. And of course it doesn't match up.
No, because the heart is feeling.
That's right, and it creates a gap between what the intellect is trying to understand and what the heart is telling them. And it's this gap which creates the fear, where they start maybe making some steps towards it, but they always retreat back into the same because it doesn't make sense to the mind. But spirit doesn't work through the intellect, it works through the heart. And so when you start to co-create with the spiritual realm, i.e. the dimensions and the frequencies that are above the third dimension which we live, what begins to happen is that we're able to start coming into our intuition and be in the flow of it. And I've found out some complete fascinating information that as this journey began uncovering. And it was really the further studies that I did is that after I came out of working with Dr. Brennan, I then spent 2 to 3 years studying shamanic practices, which is more the traditional native cultures, and studying with the medicine men from Africa, from South America, and I began correlating up what the wisdom they were holding, working with their clients and patients that I got initiated into, both African traditions and South American traditions, was correlating up to what quantum physics was telling us. And so what all of these experiences, through direct experience of working in this way, began to show me, and through direct experience, was the fact that these mechanisms of defense, which is simply coming away from our center and out of the heart into the head, are all coping mechanisms and a way of us preventing from stepping into woundings. And what I found and uncovered was that the past betrayals that we have of life and everything that's happened to us create these energetic woundings in the bioenergy field.
They're like a tear or a rip, aren't
Totally,
they?
yeah.
Sometimes a great big gaping hole,
And in
because
my
obviously I see them, so
yes, you see
it's
them.
very painful to
And in my
actually
case,
see
I
one that's
had many.
damaged.
I mean, I was filled with all sorts of anxiety and grief and addictions. I mean, I was addicted to everything. It was all distractions from these painful wounds. So to maybe explain what a wound is, it's simply when you cut yourself, it creates bleeding on your skin. And then what happens is the blood coagulates and forms a scab. And the scab is protecting the wound underneath. Well, exactly the same in the energy field, which you can see, some people can see, because they can see a broader range of the electromagnetic spectrum. Many people most humans are locked up in the visible light spectrum. Yourself, myself, some other people can see or feel or intuit a much greater range. Those people that do, these woundings in the field then repair themselves and they grow back, and what they do is they form a scab around the outside to protect that very deep pain that is held there, because the system does not want to go in and experience this pain again. Then around that wounding, what begins to happen is that there are the psychological defences which prevent anything coming into contact with this wound. It's almost like, you know, in football, they would be called the defenders, seeing we're in World Cup time right now.
Exactly.
These centre-backs and full-backs there are preventing the things from coming close to the goal, and the ego, the lower self, the wall, the mask.
The monkey mind.
These are the defences here which prevent anything coming into contact with this very painful wound. Then what happens is that any event that is held in the energy field that is of a similar vibration to what caused this issue in the first place, these defences all kick off. And the person's energy field will almost act like a circuit breaker and will send energy and some sort of defensive mechanism to protect that wound.
To just close down.
For example, there's a few different ways people will run their field to prevent the wound. Some people will come out and attack. So you know that you're working with someone's going into an emotional reaction when they throw energy over the top at you and they start maybe kicking off
Anger,
aggressively towards you, anger, frustration. Other people will kind of suck energy from you.
Psychic vampires.
Energy vampires will pull energy and you
exactly.
feel very drained after this person. You go, oh my goodness. Other people will completely just put shields over their hearts.
And just close
down and not feel anything.
Yeah.
And some people will disappear up into spirits. You're talking to them and you'd feel like they're not really here. And really these are just energetic defensive mechanisms designed to prevent someone coming into contact with this wounding.
With the pain.
And so when you start to have more consciousness around this, what you start to do is you see the person's essence beneath that, because the person is reacting in an analogical way that is just a script or a program to prevent pain from what was caused. Exactly.
Yeah, we're just going to come to a break in probably about 90 seconds or so. What's your advice to anybody who's in pain? Sometimes I say to the people I work with, just be in the pain, just feel the pain, because the worst thing we can do is allow, you know, everything to just close us down.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Well, the first thing is that if you're in emotional or psychological or physical pain, is to just first up come into a place of acceptance of it. Okay, I'm in pain. Then you need to have support. It's very important you get help. You get help in either way, but the most thing you can do to help yourself is to come into the heart space and then feel your way into the best course of action or treatment for you to deal with it. Because if you do not deal with it, it's only going to layer itself off, and then the same patterns in life are going to keep presenting themselves over and over again until you deal with it. So you're either going to deal with it now, or it's going to keep coming around to bite you over the rest of your life in ways that are going to add more pain to you. So in my world, it's much better to deal with it now.
Absolutely.
And get it done with. And thankfully, as you know, it happens very fast in the way I work.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Well, we're coming to the close of the first break of Living a Dynamic Life. I'm Mary Louise Curtis, and hopefully I will see you for the second half of Living a Dynamic Life. Thank you, Steve Jack.
obviously when the sun and the solar system are out here somewhat, they're not in this high frequency band. But now, for the next 2,000 years, our sun and the earth are in this frequency band of energy that we're going to be in for 2,000 years, where the vibration and frequency is very, very, very high. This is part of the maya that people live in, that people think that the external world is what provides them stability. Their job, their relationship, their career, the amount of money they have is what makes them stable. But in truth, it's your internal thoughts and emotions which make you stable, how other people respond, because you're completely filled up yourself. And when you realize that you're the creator and you have source within you, you completely resource yourself, and then you don't lose the need of the attachment of how the other person responds. You can be there in their pain and their suffering.